IVM.
Have you heard of the newest club everyone's in? All you have to do is pay your bills on time and you get the chance to win some amazing rewards. Being on Cred feels like I'm part of this exclusive club where I can win some amazing offers and cashbacks simply by doing good, which is paying my bills on time. That's doing good for yourself. I highly recommend it. Just download Cred. This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar on the IVM Podcast Network. After a gap for a week where I needed some time to collect myself after all the news around us, we're back with regular programming this week and the weeks going forward. I've got a very interesting chat lined up on today's episode. I always love talking to people whose work I consume, and often it's musicians or writers. I've had the opportunity to talk to someone who developed a game that I've played as well. So always a big fan of bringing people onto this show, especially if there's someone who's, like I said, work I consume. And I'm very happy to have Akshay Kapoor from the Indian Music Diaries on this episode. Hi Akshay, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Vineet. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wonderful to talk to you, man. Like I was saying in the introduction, I've followed the Indian Music Diaries, the Instagram page, for a while now. And for me, as someone who's been deeply invested with the indie music scene for a long, long time, the Indian Music Diaries, as I have become older and have less time to find underground bands, your page and website has sort of a great connect to indie music in a time when Indian indie music is really coming of its own. So congratulations, man, on some great work done on Indian Music Diaries. How are you doing otherwise?
We guys are doing pretty good, I would say. There's always a struggle of, maintaining the relevancy, but I think we are trying to document what is happening right now, especially at the ground level. And I think this could definitely serve as an archive for people and people in the future. I mean, 10 years, 15 years down the line, if people want to know what kind of bands and what kind of people were in the independent music scene then they can definitely check out this thing that we are working on right now.
That's wonderful, man. I think it's something that I've said many times on the show is that we, as Indians, we're pretty pathetic at documenting our culture as it happens. Often there are rose-tinted glasses that happen 5-8 years later. Oh, that one band was so great at that time. But now all you've got is some old dirty recordings of that band or some gig at Mood Indigo that happened and where everything is very grainy and all you can hear is people going bang in the background. But it's truly awesome when we take the time, especially when guys like you take the time to passionately document what's happening, to almost curate the indie music experience for the listener, right? I mean, it's so hard to keep track of new bands, keep track of new music, keep track of quality stuff coming out of there. So I totally love the kind of content that you guys are putting out. Let me ask you to dial it back a little bit and tell us about how you started this, right? Like I'll cue it up for you. I think it's September 2015 is when you started Indie Music Diaries as an Instagram page, right? Take us to maybe July 2015. And in what state of mind were you in when you started this? What was going through your head? How did you just push off and get this started?
I'll be extremely honest here. And I would say that I was sitting one night and I was drunk. And I was just hearing these bands that I usually used to listen to in my city, right? A couple of bands called, for example, Rag Leela, right? So I was just hearing them and I was thinking, why aren't other publications kind of talking about artists that I kind of listen to in my city, right? And that is exactly the point which hit me that, okay, I can write. I know how to write about things. So let me just start something of my own. Maybe I can make 2 people discover this band, or maybe I can make 5 people more listen to their music and fall in love with this band. And that is how it started. I made a logo at 1:30 a.m. in the night. The logo that you see right now has been made by me, and I'm not a graphic designer, okay?
Right.
So I made that logo and I put one post out at I think about 2:30 in the morning, and I woke up hungover thinking, okay, what do I do with this thing now? And I thought, like, okay, let me just do this for a while and see what happens. And here we are, 6 years down the line, and I think I've been doing the Indian Music Diaries every single day for the past 6 years. So it's a non-stop job. It's a job. I won't even call it a job because it's something that I absolutely love doing. It's a lot of stress, and I think of quitting every day, but it's worth it in the end.
It sounds very much like the indie ethic.
Yes.
The indie DIY ethic.
Absolutely.
I love what I do. I do it every day. I wish I could quit it, but I love it too much to quit it. Right?
Yeah.
I think, right? I mean, that's the indie ethic at the end of the day, right? That's it's how I feel about this podcast as well. Right? I love it. I will do it no matter how hard my day job gets. But I wish I could quit it, but I really do.
Absolutely.
Right. Let me ask you this though. Did you have like a background in journalism? Are you classical? Are you sort of trained in music? What sort of drew you to this space at that time, and especially sort of creating something new and putting yourself out there as a writer? Did you have the sort of training for it, or you said, "Hey, I have the passion for it. Everything else comes out."
Okay, so I have been. I would say I've been writing on and off since I was a child. I got into I got acquainted to this whole independent music scene, I think, way back when I used to go to Cafe Morrison gigs in South Extension in Delhi. That was, I think, when I was in the 11th grade. Since then, I've been hearing a lot of independent bands. And after my graduation, I did a post-graduation in mass communication. And that is where I kind of got acquainted with how to do marketing, what's building a community like, what's brand management, everything of that sort. So I think that whole education part also came into play, especially when I had to grow this thing from zero followers to like 33,000 followers. But like the basic thing was the passion, I would say. The passion to kind of just do things on a daily basis and discover new music. I think that played more than anything else did.
That's wonderful, man. I think more and more people should look at it like that, right? I mean, once you feel strongly about something, and that's kind of core to the indie ethic anyway, right? Everything else, all the other skills that you need, either you generate yourself or people who have those skills kind of join
Absolutely.
you, right? Let me ask you this then. When you got started, what was sort of the initial reaction among other indie music fans or among other listeners, right? Because I know you said that the gap that you were trying to fill was, hey, I really like these bands. Nobody else is talking about these guys. Let me start doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But the proof of the pudding really is when other music fans also recognize the gap that you're filling. So how was the initial reaction when you started this? How were the early days like?
A lot of people did connect with us, but I would say that we really, really had to earn our part. We really had to earn the respect, because people were like, who the hell are these people talking about music, right? Because I obviously understand, because Rolling Stone India talking about music back then and still is, right? As a new player, people were of the opinion that, why do we take cues of what is in or what is good from newbies like you? So we really had to earn our part. We really had to kind of really go into curation of good music, and that is when the perception kind of started changing. We also made it a point that we do things differently. We really wanted to bring something new to the whole independent music scene, and I think we have been able to do that with the kind of curation that we've been doing and the kind of response that we give to people who are contacting us or wanting to collaborate with us, and that kind of helped change the perception.
But when you say trying to do something new, what was the intent there? Can you help us understand that a little bit?
The intent was to kind of grab attention, because when you do something new, people do take notice. And back in, I think, 2017 or 18, we started doing Instagram takeovers with these musicians, a lot of bands, a lot of artists. And since then, everyone in the scene has started doing takeovers. So the intent is to bring something new to the table so that the whole industry can kind of see what's happening, grow. And I think this is how you build new listeners, right? You grab new ears by doing something new. I think that was the intent of doing any kind of new creation.
Brilliant. And you started with Instagram, right? That was the sort of first platform or first social media that you started with, right? Now Instagram's super visual, and the language of content on the Indian Music Diary is also very, very visual, right? It's not a 5-word review and stuff like that. You lead with a picture, and if someone's interested in reading, they'll go ahead and read. That was the origin story. But now you have a website, a more developed Facebook community. How has that growth really been for you, right? And do you still lead with Instagram, or is the website sort of more important as time has gone by? You're seeing better traffic there. What's the strategy?
So the strategy is to do things platform by platform, because no platform is similar to the other, right? You have to understand that Facebook works in a different way, Twitter works in a different way, Instagram works in a different way. So until and unless you understand how these platforms are working and what's the strength of each platform is, you can't really develop it more. So we do things separately on the website to grow traffic there. We do things separately on Facebook and separately on Instagram. And now we've started our Discord server and our Twitter handle as well. So the point is to treat each platform differently, but also maintain a certain homogeneity in terms of the kind of things that are going out.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this though. How big is your team now? I mean, it started as a drunken thing on a September night, and now you're multi-platform publishing. You got a website up and running. That website has content frequently updated on it, which is a rarity in Indian music. And I say this as someone who's seen it happen since the days of Split Magazine and Arun Kale doing the one-man show at that time. But how big is the team now? How have you all, I mean, come together? What does it look like a typical day at the office for the Indian Music Diaries?
Okay, so first of all, everybody is working remotely.
Right.
Many of the writers I haven't even met, but I love the kind of work that they do, and we have such a great rapport when we talk about independent music, or we talk about other things as well. So the rapport has been developed, everything remotely. So we have a tech person who handles the website. We have an operations guy who kind of arranges for and handles all operations bit. Then there's the editor, which is me, and I kind of oversee a lot of every other thing as well. And then we have a dedicated, writers team. I think as of now, we have about 8 writers who are working either working on genre specific pieces, or either like some trend based pieces. So that's what the team is kind of looking at right now. And then recently, when we started our Discord server, we brought on board a Discord community manager as well, who kind of looks after the doings and the workings of the Discord community.
Oh man, that sounds like a full-fledged team and sort of very well thought out in terms of the different operations and different aspects of it. Let me ask you this. I think it's one of the most pertinent, maybe slightly evil questions to ask in the indie space. But I'm sure all of you have day jobs as well, right?
Yes, we do.
A, how do you divide your time? And B, how do you guys, if at all, look at monetization or making money for the Indian Music Diaries?
Okay, so the first and foremost is that you need to kind of prioritize, okay? When most of my money for sustenance is coming from my day job, then I have to prioritize that, because that is paying me money. But on the other hand, I dedicate as much time as possible to the platform to overlooking and kind of the executing bit.
Mhm.
Everyone who's associated with us has a day job or is studying, and we do look at monetization. We pay all our writers. We make it a point to give back to everyone who is associated with us and is working. And I would say we get by. We are not doing absolutely lovely, but that's the struggle, and that's an, I think, everlasting struggle.
I hope it's not everlasting. I'm pretty sure with the kind of work that you guys are doing and with the way that the indie music community is growing, pretty sure it's not going to be an everlasting struggle. But it's good to know that these aspects are also cared for, right? Because again, as someone who started writing for music publications way back when, getting paid to write music was the holy grail, right? I mean, I've gotten paid to write sports. I've gotten paid to write academic papers for some reason, but very rarely you see people getting paid to write music, right? And I think that's the big shift, and it's very heartening to know that that's something that you guys are also following very religiously. Let me ask you this, Akshay, and this is where very few other people, other than the editor of an indie music magazine, to ask this question to, right? But the music discovery is completely broken, right? It's completely fragmented. Sure, you have streaming apps who have their own curation, you have algorithms and all of that, but that's sort of a level 2 of discovery, right? After your initial spurt of growth has really happened as an artist. How do you keep your ear to the ground and keep discovering new artists when everybody's a producer, everybody's a musician now? People are releasing albums straight to their Facebook and Instagram, maybe not even, or YouTube, maybe not even looking at proper publishing anymore. A, how do you channelize all of those disparate sources of music? And B, what's your algorithm for quality? How do you then choose what to curate and what not to, or what to leave by, right? So we have two-part question. How do you keep your ears to the ground for exciting new music, and then what's your sort of algorithm for curation?
Okay, firstly, discovering is heavily dependent on stalking. We stalk a lot of people from the scene. The stalking is basically based on who is listening to what, because a lot of times, artists share each other's work, and that is very heartening to see. But other than that, we rely on our community of listeners as well. We get a lot of cues from what they are listening to, because, like, if I'm a discovery fanatic, then a lot of the people following the Indian Music Diaries are also discovery fanatics.
Right.
And that is how we get a lot of discovery possible, because these people keep on suggesting new artists and new releases to us. Other than that, we get absolutely amazing amount of emails on a daily basis about new releases, especially debut ones. And in the last year, a lot of tier 2 cities have also tier 2 city musicians have also started sending us stuff that they are releasing. So that's very, I think, a great thing to see, which is coming out in the recent times. Secondly, I would say the quality or the curation kind of depends on the sensibilities of our team, I would say. In terms of, for example, if I have an electronic features writer, I trust her completely in terms of decisions made regarding what to feature and what not. And since she basically is involved into the whole electronic music community, she kind of discovers a lot of artists and decides what to feature and what not. But same for, I would say, our hip-hop writer, then same for, I would say, our rock singer-songwriter, writer, and things like that. But on the other hand, I also kind of make it a point to hear and discover new artists and suggest these artists to our writers. So the curation depends on the fact that if it's weird, if it's interesting, we will feature it. We've featured everything from a noise artist to an Indian classical artist, and that's the aim. We want to expose our audience to all kinds of music. Since I kind of make it a point to discover all genres of music, I would want to expose that to my, our followers as well, because I don't believe in genre specific approaches.
Right.
And that's the aim. So if it's weird, if it's interesting, we will feature it. If it sounds good, send it our way, and definitely we'll do something about it.
I know you mentioned you're not genre specific, but are there any genres that the team at TIMD feels very strongly about, saying, hey, no, this is the kind of shit that we will always look out for and cover? I mean, any sort of crowd favorites that you guys have there?
Not really. Since we have genre specific feature writers, right? That makes it so interesting, because the electronic artist feature writer kind of takes care of the electronic music side. The hip hop writer takes care of the hip hop side. The rock metal writer takes care of the that community. Now we have a jazz and funk writer on board as well. So that's the aim. We don't want to. I really don't want my team to have like crowd favorites. I want them to have personal favorites. That's how we can develop a cult following, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
I think that's the aim when it comes to this structure, is that like everybody decides what is, going on in their own respective communities that they love.
Right. Sounds very much like early 2000s Pitchfork, where we're like, we have an editorial voice. This is what we're going to do. Sure. I mean, late 2000s, I think it was around the time when My Dark Twisted Fantasy came out, when they were like, no, we need to do electronic and rap as sort of, we have to do it. But before that, it was a lot like, okay, this is what we like. This is what we're going to do. But it sounds like that. And I think it definitely has its own merits for sure. Let me ask you this before I go further into how you create the content, right? You talked about a lot of the followers of your page being music discovery oriented, right? And I'm one of those guys as well. I must discover new artists all the time, right? To the point where now I might not remember the name of the song, but a new artist, and then go to that artist's song radio and then look at more new artists is sort of a ritual for us, right? I mean, but that's a very different state of mind. The music fan who is intent on discovering new music, as opposed to the mainstream, where the music fan is intent on listening to the same old songs as many times as they like, right? Conventional mainstream music is maybe a cachet of 100 to 200 songs that about 80 to 90% of the audience is always listening to. Why do you think that is? And I think, to me, that this is the fundamental conflict at the heart of independent versus mainstream radio versus mainstream music. Is there's a bunch of people who want to listen to interesting, new, discovery-oriented music, and then there's a bunch of people who only want to listen to the same songs over and over and over again. Why do you think that is?
I think I could put it in one word. It's comfort.
Sure.
People take comfort in re-listening to songs. And I think that's the same reason we also listen to albums repeatedly, right?
Right.
I've heard The Dark Side of the Moon so many times, because I love that album, and it's always so comforting to just play it, again and again and again. I think I've heard Lifafa's Jago, I think 50, 60 times. I'm like probably more than that, because the comfort lies in re-listening to music, and that will always and always be the case. I think there was a scientific study about it as well, wherein when we listen to songs that we like again and again, we feel better because of some, hormones that are released. So I think those 80-90% people who will re-listen to songs will always be there. But I think even within the independent music community who listens to, these independent music artists, I think even there 80 to 90% of the people are re-listening to artists that they've discovered and liked.
Right.
So I think that amount of people will always be there.
Right. Do you think it's possible to convert someone who is probably someone who likes to receive opinion about music and then tune into that, to someone who is more discovery oriented? Have you seen that happen in your experience with your audiences?
Yes, a lot of times it's happened that people discover some artist on our platform, and probably if they discover it on an Instagram story, or if they discover it from a clip that we posted, they do, when they discover and they do like that, music, they go ahead and follow that artist. They go ahead and stream that artist. So it's so easy to convert people to listen to new music. And I think the focus should be on making them discover this by exposing them to this kind of new music. And that is why I mentioned earlier as well that we don't focus on pushing out the same kind of music over and over again, is because we want to help in discovery.
Fantastic, man. Let me ask you this now, and this is more about your editorial, about content, right? We are a generation that is being entertained all the time, right? Everything is entertainment for us. Social media is entertainment, news is entertainment, sports is entertainment, everything is entertainment, right? That has led to so many different types of content formats that have come around, right? Now, if I dial back the years, there's a song called Paper Pulley on Thermal and a Quarter's second album, Plan B, which starts with a Frank Zappa quote that says, rock journalism is people who can't write, talking to people who, writing about people who can't talk for people who can't read. And now we're in a situation where we don't have to write at all. There's so many other different types of content that can be created, right? How do you then approach creating content that will really work, right? And I'm coming from it from a perspective where, hey, बॉलीवुड में तो मतलब अनन्या पांडे मास्क पहन के पैदल चली, उसका फोटो खींचा, वो कंटेंट है, right? But that works because, like it or not, Ananya Pandey is super famous and apparently people care about this content. That's not the case with indie musicians, right? They're not name brand guys. You won't be able to tell me, you and the lead singer of Dream Note apart, right? There's no way. How do you then approach creating content about something that is intrinsically new, right? Everything about it is new. The name of the song is new, the style of music is new, the people behind it are new. How do you look at creating content about it that introduces these artists to audiences without making them feel like, too much information overload, etc.? How do you look at your editorial policy there?
I think the most important bit when it comes to the editorial policy is that you have to understand who your audience is.
Right.
What do they like reading? And what language do they like to read in? I think that's absolutely important. If I could cite a lot of publications that have kind of cracked this code, I mean, don't mind me taking this example, but for example, Scoop Poop and BuzzFeed. As much shit as they might be, a lot of people do end up reading it, right? A lot of people end up engaging with the content. And what I've learned over the years, that there is no glory in being obscure.
Right.
There is no absolute glory in being a popper and being someone who no one listens to. And I think I hate that, because when you're creating music out of your soul, right? I want millions and millions of people hearing to you, because dude, you're amazing. You're producing great music. You're writing such lovely lyrics, and you're putting your heart and soul into music. And why is no one hearing it? So there's no glory in being obscure. That's what I believe in, and that is where our editorial policy also kind of comes into play. We want to talk, and we want to sound how these people want us to sound. Because at the end of the day, if I can make 5 more people an artist, fan, I can make 10 people go and listen to your song, then my job is sorted.
Right.
My job is worth it. And that is where I kind of come into play with the editorial policy. I tell all my writers also that keep it crisp. Don't make it sound very hoity-toity. Don't make it sound very complex. Keep it very straight. Let's focus on the fact that you, as a writer, you tell me what do you feel hearing this music and why it is relevant to you. I think that's the crux of what I want in an editorial feature that I put out, and that's about it. I want people to read that one paragraph that I put on Instagram. They should be intrigued, and they should go and hear the artist out.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and obviously, I would say that we've also molded our policy in terms of putting out a lot of other kind of shoulder content as well, right? We try putting out relevant memes. We try putting out short reels. We try putting out news pieces. Something that people can interact and see that this community is so alive and this community is so active. So, besides the writing bit, the community bit comes into play when we put out these kinds of content.
Right. What I wanted to check in was, can you give us a couple of examples of pieces of content that have done really well for you, that have brought in a lot of audience, or dare I say, that has made a band, right? I mean, publications love to claim, hey, we discovered this artist. So can you give us a couple of examples of pieces of content that really worked and maybe artists that you guys helped discover?
I would see it'll be hard to take credit for making people discover some artists, because since we kind of live in a digital age and everyone's connected to everyone. But I would cite you an article that kind of worked a lot. We did an article about top 10 recording studios for independent musicians in India, and surprisingly, that particular article brought a lot of new customers to these recording studios, and it was so amazing to see these recording studios getting so much traffic and getting so many queries, and in the end getting so much business because of one article we did.
Right.
Another was we did an article on these guitar luthiers in India, and we understood that there is no other article out there that talks about guitar luthiers in India, right? So that's another thing that we did. So these are the kind of discovery-based pieces that we keep on doing side by side. Then another article we did is how to make your press kit. A lot of artists in India have checked out that article and they made their press kits based on the information that we put out. So these kind of pieces, I think, work a lot. And another thing in terms of the content is that, like, we started building our Spotify playlists, I think, a couple of months back. That too helped a lot of discovery in terms of discovering new artists, because people have a habit of playing a playlist and then discovering artists from that.
Right.
So that's something that we also keep on doing side by side.
That's fantastic, man. I think what I really liked about the 3 articles that you talked about was that none of them were, oh, look, check out this artist or check out this music. It's more community-oriented content that you're creating that could today help an artist, but eventually, if an artist is getting connected to a recording studio, it's best for the community, because, hey, that means more music for people, right?
Yes.
What I want to kind of round this section off with is a timeline of your growth, right? Now, I know you started it all alone. Now you've got maybe 10, 12 people working with you. Can you give us maybe 3 or 4 instances which gave you confidence, reaffirmed your faith in doing this? Because by God, we know that when you do something for the love of it, you need periodical reaffirmations, right? So just take us through some of those, man, over the past 6-7 years.
Okay, so I think the first few years were these little pieces of confirmation that you receive when you post an article, right? And you see the musician's family and the musician's friends kind of commenting on that article saying, hey, thank you, like, so happy to see you get featured and things like that. Reading that was enough encouragement to keep on continuing. Other than that, I think since we launched our website, we have started seeing a lot of growth and a lot of interest in artists contacting us themselves. That is something that we've seen, happening. And, what you call a lot of established artists, they have started showing a lot of interest in getting their features done or, being a part of this community that we're developing. I think a lot changed when I kind of scored an interview with Steven Wilson a few months back. I think that was something that also was a great point in the whole journey. But I would say that the whole journey has been very slow. But the fact that we've developed all this community in a very organic and a very non-spend kind of a way. I think that's been very worthy to have seen developed.
That's brilliant, man. Has, in your estimation, though, since the time that you've been doing this, how has the attitude towards Indian independent music or Indian non-film music changed, especially in the DIY circles? Have you seen that change happen as well?
Yeah, the changes I think very evident from the fact that these artists are getting hell amount of streams when they release their music, and it's really good to kind of see that debut artists are getting the kind of attention that that they deserve. People release 1 2 singles and you see them kind of developing a very very loyal audience, and that's the attitude that has changed. The whole, with players like Spotify and players like Apple Music kind of doing these specialized programs as to help discovery, and the whole attitude for the independent community has changed. And I think one of the biggest factors that has helped the independent community has to be the rise of hip hop. And you see so much amount of money being pumped into the whole hip hop scene in India. It's so exciting to kind of see that, and I think the next 4 5 years are going to be so important for everyone who's wanting to associate with this independent music community, because now we are seeing that a lot of Bollywood people also wanting to take a piece of this pie. A lot of playback singers are kind of trying to focus on developing their whole independent music audience. That's a different thing, that they're not probably getting the kind of response that they are hoping for. That's a different thing. But it's just great to see that they are also kind of seeing the value in this, and they are kind of investing their time and effort into developing this independent audience. And I think a great thing which has changed from, let's say, 2010s, from the 2000s to the 2010s, is that we see a lot of musicians who are relying on their music full time for their sustenance. That's something that was not heard of in the 2000s, right? And now with the rise of streaming royalties and their YouTube monetization royalties and everything from brand deals to sync revenues and everything, it's great to see that musicians are kind of I think this is the first generation of musicians who are corely relying on their music full time for the sustenance. And I feel very sad because the whole trajectory would have been very different had this pandemic not hit us, because a lot of musicians who were trying to get into this have been impacted, and have had no choice but to resort to other kinds of things.
Definitely, I think the pandemic has put a spanner in the works, but you're right. It's a massive difference from maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when you still had great bands, right? I mean, you had bands coming out of Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, you bands coming out of even smaller cities that way, right? But none of them actually have stuck around, unless you're still counting Parikrama, which is that Parikrama. Let me ask you this. There is a school of thought, which, and again, I myself have been guilty of this school of thought, which is like, bro, you're a Bollywood musician. You have an established base. You have all the support you need. I sometimes feel that they treat indie as a sort of fad, or as a bandwagon to get onto. And sometimes it feels a little bit shortchanging the audience, to be very honest, and in my opinion. Only in this country can you have the biggest label sponsor a show called Indie Hai Hum, right? And there's this sort of dichotomy that we live in, right? I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not the essence of it, so to speak, right? And on the same hand, it's also refreshing to hear someone like you say, hey, it's great that they're doing this. They're not getting the response that they're looking for, but good on you for trying, right? How do you reconcile this? As a practitioner in the music space, do you feel this is something that's here to stay? Are we going to see in maybe the next 5-10 years time an indie musician graduate to mainstream Bollywood or film or other kind, as opposed to what we're seeing now, where mainstream musicians are graduating to indie. Do you think that's on the cards?
I would say definitely. I mean, not by the kind of ways that we might expect, but it is definitely already happening, right? A prime example is Pratik Kuhar. I mean,
Right.
he's gotten his works, so many works featured in movies and featured in web series, right? So I think this change from indie to Bollywood will happen and is happening, but I think the way in which it happens will be different. We will not see independent musicians just hopping onto the Bollywood bandwagon. I think it will be through a lot of sync work that will synchronization work that will come into play.
Mhm.
On the other hand, we are definitely seeing a lot of playback singers kind of get into the indie bandwagon, and that is because the kind of things that Bollywood subjects them to. I mean, imagine yourself, okay, you've sung 50 songs over the course of your career, but none of them are owned by you. I mean, how would you feel about that, right? That's so shitty. So that's the whole thing when it comes to people selecting independent, because they get to own and decide what kind of music that they will be releasing. And the fact that is more, I think, a funny and amusing fact when it comes to this is that Bollywood musicians, playback singers, expect the same kind of response when they release an independence track and they don't get it, because dude, independent musicians have been working on developing an audience for years and years, and you expect that you release one track and you're going to see millions and millions of plays. When it comes to your own independent release, it's not going to happen, and that's when they get like a shock. And I think it's very amusing to kind of see that.
It's also sort of testament to the fact that, hey, so far you've been releasing music in context to something else that's the primary piece of art, which is the film, right? Like, no film, no music. Sorry. And now you're trying to do it on your own, and it's going to take some time. That's not to say that wonderful artists are not releasing great music independently, but it does take its own time, unless you're Taylor Swift, in which case you can 10 years on choose to re-release everything and be like a big middle finger to your label who's again has contributed to your rise, has made you such a big star, etc., etc. But the ethics of ownership, between the creator and the manager, compel her to do something like that, right? And it's an interesting place to be, right? The larger consciousness that exists around owning your own music is something that's definitely born out of the indie DIY ethic, something that independent musicians have been practicing for years now. It's interesting to see mainstream music also kind of come around to that. Will it lead to the fall of the labels? Who knows? But
not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, right? That's not going to happen. Let me ask you this to just round off our section before we go into our last question, right? You spoke about the pandemic putting a spanner in the works for a lot of musicians, right? And it's been hard for them to create music. There's no live gigs anymore, which is often the source, a big source of income apart from streaming revenue. How's it been for you guys, though, as creators of content around music? I know that a lot of musicians have taken this time to put down and create music that they otherwise would have created maybe over 3 to 5 years, that they've put out in a year's time. How has it been for you guys? How are you sort of keeping track? Are you looking at alternate ways of growing? How has the pandemic changed your plans of growth?
We had a lot of plans to do a lot of exciting things in 2020, and all of them went down the drain. We had planned to get into the whole live music scene and start curating things, on our own, and that obviously, didn't happen. Then a lot of works was there in, a lot of brand campaigns as well, and the brand money also dried up. The whole market shrunk, and brands are so reluctant to kind of give any kind of monetary sponsorship nowadays. So, that obviously did take a hit. we also had planned to make our second edition of the Indian Music Diaries Awards bigger and better this time, and that could not happen because of the whole pandemic. So a lot of plans took a hit, but at the same time, I'm really happy that a lot of musicians got around to working on their music and releasing stuff. I can vouch for it that the whole volume of music releases has increased the past year because, for example, on an average, I was getting 2 to 3 emails a day before the pandemic started. Post that, I've been getting like 7, 8, 10 emails a day on a daily basis, and that's I mean, it's a struggle to keep track, but it's so so happy to kind of have that happen because when a lot of people get into the whole music scene and a lot of stakeholders get associated, it's very hard to break this whole thing down. And I think the whole independent music scene has great future ahead.
I hope so, man. I hope so. Akshay, it's been wonderful getting your take on all things independent music. Like I said, I'm always delighted to talk to people whose work I consume as a consumer of entertainment, and for that I must thank you and commend you and the entire team on some very essential work for the Indian music scene that's happening through TIMD. Before I let you go, though, usually I ask just one question, which is give me an entertainment recommendation. But since we have you here, I'm going to do like a small quiz with you, if that's okay.
Lovely.
Right, to get our quiz started, and there is no coffee hamper here. There is nothing. I will just give you fresh air and love. But for our quiz on this episode, give me your top 3 music acts from the pandemic, from 2020, 2021.
Do you want debut ones or like just like the ones that I've been hearing?
Give me both.
Okay, I'll try both. Okay.
Sure.
So the artists that I've been kind of hearing on loop are Peter Cat Recording Company, of course. One is obviously Parvaz, something that I've begun to since I loved when I started hearing them, I think in 2015. Then another artist that I kind of discovered last year and absolutely fell head over heels in love with was Bharat Chauhan. He's a singer-songwriter from Delhi. Some new ones I think would be Jatayu. They're a Carnatic jazz fusion band from the south. Then another artist that debuted last year and have done amazing work is Fakir in the Ark. They're a hip hop plus jazz act, and they've done kind of really good work. And another debut artist from last year is Tanmaya Bhatnagar, whose work I really like.
Awesome. That is a full stack. Give me your top 3 albums from the last few years.
Okay, these are very easy to count. I think one would be Lifafa's Jago. One of the best albums that has come from the independent music circuit. Another would be Parvaz's Baran. I think beautiful album. Then Prabdeep's Classic. I think it's a very classic album.
Definitely.
And I think these are some of my favorite. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a lot of great ones, but these are the ones that are top of my mind right now.
I asked for 3 and those are 3. Did you read Pradeep's Tavia review on Pitchfork?
Yes, I did, of course.
It was the moment, man, to see Pradeep up on Pitchfork was an absolute moment, right? All right, my last question in this quiz to you is your top 3 indie songs from 2021 so far.
Okay, the ones that I've been hearing to would be, I would give 4, okay, because
sure.
I can think of 4. One would be Anushka Maske's Empire of Fear that got released recently. I think it's a beautiful track. Another would be Seedhe Maut's Namastute, a banger of a release.
With a great video.
With an absolutely great video. Then another would be Enjoy Njami by Dhi and Arivu. Dude, it's amazing track, and the kind of production that has happened on the video is next level. And another artist, not particularly from India, but obviously a South Asian Indian descent, is Closer by Khanvik. I think a beautiful, beautiful video and a lovely experimental electronic track.
Fantastic, man. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this episode with this section because all of these are just great picks. I'm joking, obviously. Thanks so much, man. That was really awesome of you to share.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure, absolutely. And all the best to the team at the Independent Music Diaries. May you guys go from strength to strength and along with the indie music scene. I hope you had fun on this episode, Akshay. Thanks so much for making time. And that's it from me, Vineet Kanabar, on this episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. This is me saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Siet, TheWholeTruthFoods.com, and PayPal. We really do appreciate the support. On Cyrus Says, we discussed quite a bit about the local assembly elections this month. Vasanti Hariprakash was there to talk about the West Bengal elections, and then we also spoke to Pradeep Gupta, a psephologist and author. He's the chairman and MD of Access My India. Do definitely check that episode out. Great conversation. Tune into This Round Is On Me, where Gauri Devi Dayal caught up on the latest trends in the PR industry with Archana Jain from PR Pundit. On The Habit Coach, Ashton Doctor spoke to Anandita Chatterjee. She's the founder of Travel Chatter. She's been a marketer with some large firms and has traveled to 67 countries so far. It was a RuPaul Drag Race fan club on KBCD where Farhad and Sunetro discussed the show's best moments and talents. Amber Rana was joined by celebrity fitness trainer Shivoham on New Year Kanun to discuss fitness laws and regulations in India. They talk about the laws and infrastructure that exist to protect gyms, trainers, and also consumers in the fitness industry. And on the note with Maruk Inayat, we have clinical psychologist and friend of the network, Sonali Gupta. She talks about ongoing mental health issues like survivor's guilt, coping with anxiety around the pandemic, and doom scrolling. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show, Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.